All right, welcome back to the Refractor Rants podcast, a podcast about all things sports cards. I'm one of your hosts, Tommy, also known as TV Sports Cards on social media. I'm here with my good friend and co-host Max, also known as CardsMax. He has risen Easter edition. Max, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good that I am risen and in good health. If I apologize. I apologize as much as I can for not being able to record Refractor Rants for a week. Although I did ask Tommy to record from the hospital bed, of which he was unable to because he's a busy man. But I'm glad that I'm able to speak to Tommy and speak to you, the listener, right now.
And this is not the first time someone has been compared to Jesus on this podcast. The last time it was a self comparison. This time it is me comparing you to Jesus. So just want to lay that out here. But Max, I've obviously been following very closely along on what's been going on. What do you want to give the listeners a little insight into what happened? I know you're feeling a lot better now, but I know
Yeah, no,
I've been worried about you.
Yeah, the TLDR, the too long didn't read of it, is that I had a very minor operation to remove a cyst from my head. Got nothing that was a relatively major operation at all. Went completely fine. I then was feeling a little bit lightheaded after the operation and fell. I was standing, tall normally, and I fell on the side of my head and I got a concussion like symptoms, and a minor skeletal fracture and brain bleeding and not good stuff. Was in critical condition for a little bit, but it ended up that the brain bleeding didn't transpire to anything worse or I needed to get an operation, which I'm grateful that I have my life. I'm grateful that I'm in good health. And I essentially was hospitalized for a week, looked under close care. I won't be traveling to shows for all of April. Most important thing from that, I won't be traveling to shows for next month. But yeah, I was put under watch for about a week. I was healing at an appropriate pace, and now I will be moderately light on myself for the next month. Although I'll always be a hardo, and will try to make sure that I don't have any permanent ramifications of this that are in my control.
Well, Max, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I know that was scary there for a second. Shout out everyone who was, wishing you best wishes and stuff. I know that there's a lot of people who are worried about you, and I'm glad that you're doing better. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
from the bottom of my heart, if you did keep me in your thoughts or give me warm wishes, either directly to me or even for just I was in your thoughts or prayers, it goes a long way, and I'm grateful for every single person that did that.
yeah, and I know we talk about this sometimes, but always just want to emphasize, everyone who listens to this podcast, I know you're listening mainly for us to talk about sports, but the messages that people send us about listening to the podcast and loving it, any episode or any little bit, we really appreciate it. It really makes me and Max's, it's kind of the reason why we do this, right, Max?
Yeah, I mean, we're here for the sports cards. We're here for the community. We're here to have fun. This is, as of now, a not-for-profit podcast. There's no external narrative or anything like that. It's a fun medium to talk about cards, talk about what's going on, talk with my good friend TV Sports Cards, and talk about anything that needs to be talked about.
Well, Max, now that we got the sappiness out of the way, I've been seeing a lot of posts from CardsMax about grading Mr. $50,000 grading submission. I would love to learn a little bit about what's been going on and your buying and selling. I know you've been getting pretty aggressive out here. What have you been buying? What have you been trying to grade? What are the strategies? Give me the whole lowdown. I'm gonna dive deep here.
Yeah, I mean, I want to help as many podcast listeners as I can while still keeping some of my secret marinara sauce to myself. But I think ending 2023, I want to think about Q4. We were beginning this Victor Wembanyama hype. The Don Russes came out. We have these ugly artist-proof case hits, cards that we don't really understand. And then like a seismic boom, NFL Prism hit. There was a lot of discussion and contrarian debate on what is the perfect time to buy a new product. I want to say NF just to make sure my timeline's right, and really just to explain what I've been doing the past few months. NFL Prism. I want to say released January 2nd, give or take. Released very early. And if you bought CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson right on release week, When they're blue ices, I think we're doing 300 to 400 on the blue ices on Anthony Richardson, and I want to say 12 to 1500 on the blue ices on Stroud. You are still very, very well up. And I want to say now Anthony Richardson blue ices are about 1200 and Stroud blue ices are about 2500 raw or in a nine. So it's always been the biggest debate of what is the best time to jump in for a product, and are you okay tolerating a less than 2.5 multiplier, because the multiplier would be closer to 2 kind of on release because everything drops and capturing profit. And I want to emphasize that it's not just a battle of trying to find clean, my least favorite word, clean raw, but also being voracious and moving as swiftly as you can, being proactive and trying to move your cards to the proper audience and being able to pivot from one card to another.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about that too, Max. This idea of like, is it bad to buy cards of products that are just being released? Just me personally, like I know you're trying to scoop up blue ices of QBs and Wemby and stuff coming out in Prism. I've been keeping my eye very close on 20 to 24 tops flagship. I'm a big fan of the black parallels. Those often are coming up in droves during the first few months, and you can really scoop them up. I'm not talking the first one posted on eBay, but I'm talking the third, fourth, fifth ones posted on eBay. Those you can actually get at very reasonable rates. The ones from years past are not showing up. Like these cards, for the most part, are almost all sold in these first few months after the product is released. I know that this is a little different than from what you're saying here on the grading side of things and what you're trying to do on the flipping world. But like even as a collector, there are often times where you should be buying these cards close to release date.
Oh yeah, I will never really chastise someone if they're making a relatively competitive offer and their number doesn't work with their margin, and as long as they aren't insulting or worse, entitled, it's completely fine. That's just the name of the game. But I will always internally poke a little fun that if you want a very special PC card for 190 instead of 200 because of the comp math, then I do not have much empathy there. It's like, because at least, when I target PC cards, which are usually very narrow in what I'm interested in, it's like, I want to make the seller happy. I don't, not necessarily to make light of money, but I don't want to be the one that's trying to get every single dime down.
For sure. And I know that you've been buying a lot of QBs right now in the off season. This is often if you've been
Or
listening to this podcast since April 2022, you know that this is the time of the year where Max goes pretty heavy into the QB hype. You want to buy grade before the season starts.
yeah, even if we're doing in reflection, I mean, I just gemmed a CJ Stroud blue ice, and this is the second that I've owned. Trying to pose with this card, but I am technologically challenged. Yeah, cool little CJ Stroud blue ice that I just got back in the mail. I've owned two. Not only is the market competitive to land them, but now that we are, this is April 4th, we're definitively 3 months from release. It's like you are not going to find clean raw on the quarterbacks. That is pretty much gone at this point. The product's been ripped enough. Maybe again, estimating 70-80% of the product has been ripped. And the closest thing we can do is base that off of gem rates and just seeing the stuff that is submitted. Luck in this aspect is that the quality control for this year's Prism was like very high for both basketball and football. But again, tangent to my greater point, the really desirable stuff has maintained the high price points. The retail parallels have dipped, and especially if you're going more into that more budget $20 to $200 raw card range for grading.
Well, it's interesting to hear. I was going to ask you about the quality control in this
Oh
year's
yeah,
Prism
we
because
can
yeah,
go
like
for it.
what are you seeing on that? Like I know that you've been buying raw. I mean, I know you've talked in the past about kind of your strategies for buying raw on eBay. I'll let the listeners try to go back in the history to figure out your secret sauces there because they're sprinkled in throughout the
Yeah.
almost 100 episodes we've done of the podcast in general. But not speaking to that necessarily, but would love to hear what you're seeing just from looking at raw cards on eBay and grading yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the biggest thing is don't be afraid to take a loss, and that if if you lose 10% on a raw card, but a 10 is a double up, I mean, that's just math. At least when I'm looking at nines to analyze and see, okay, should I take the gamble here or not? Some people say this is stupid. Some people say it's smart. I like to think I'm smart, but I generally look at gem rate data, and if a type of card gems relatively frequently, then it makes me more want to, or more likely. My language is a little bit imprecise. Sorry, I had a brain injury, but yeah, there's a bit more of a yearning to want to target that type of card that has maybe a 50-50 toss up to be a 9 or a 10, especially on the higher end as a crack rather than something that only gems 20 or 30% of the time. Because again, you're just throwing money at this. Even if you're in aggregate looking at trying to make sure that you don't source items with corner damage or bad centering or something that's easily discernible, I'm not using the word fixable, but even discernible in that, a dinged corner is clear as day damaged. It's dinged, and that's going to be a 10 and an obvious, or excuse me, a 9 and an obvious 9, no matter who it is. But I think as long as you view it as a vehicle of money and time, the two most more important variables that we have as human beings, love is up there too, but that doesn't help us make money with grading orders. That's what matters most, and that's what I'm looking at when I'm analyzing things.
And just for Tommy's sake, as a producer, hoping to make a clip out of your
And
grading
a lot.
submission here. What was in the $50,000 PSA submission that you posted about?
So so I don't mean the flex, but the order is actually bigger, and that was only my regular express and super express piles because I didn't think a 70 card order of bulk would be that interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to bore people, and that's not my goal. But yeah, so and again, also I was in the hospital for about a week, so I had a little mail waiting for me when I got home. Just a little though, not too much. The 5 cards that went Super Express which it has a declared value of, I wanna say between $2,500 and $5,000 is, was an Anthony Richardson Color Blast, which I also have a gem on my table. Anthony Richardson Color Blast, a Connor McDavid foil, and that's been the PSA quite a few times. A CJ Stroud tie-dye XRC Prism, which is on round 2, a GG Jackson Gold Prism out of 10, which recently had a sale of $7,000 raw, and a Victor Wembanyama Blue Ice, which I think right now does about $4,000 to $5,000 raw. So
Dude,
those are the 5 biggest cards from the sub that was just sent out.
You're telling me someone paid $7,000 for a GG Jackson card, dude? Oh my
Yes.
god. Holy fuck, dude. Jesus Christ.
It's the Wild West, and we love sports cards.
Oh man, at least you're not buying any of these fake case hit animated cards that Panini has now decided that every single product that they put out has to
Are
have
you
some sort of
bashing
anime
I
ridiculous
didn't mean to
art.
interrupt, but it sounds like
No.
you're bashing mangas.
No, I'm not bashing mangas. I'm bashing the every single Prizmania, the
I have
whatever the hell they put in the hoops this year. Like,
I have
come
I
on.
have one Scoot Henderson Prismania submitted, and it's one of the only Prismanias that I bought just because the corners seem to be chipped and the dots, like you could kind of count the centering on the dots pretty easily. But just out of recognition, it's like it isn't grading on a curve for a card per se, but some inherent issues with cards are immediately recognizable and then immediately disregarded as just being part of the card. Um, we can talk about a nice, cool CardsMax flip in that right before the Browns beat, no, sorry, right before the Texans beat the Browns, right? I found a CJ Stroud manga pulled by an owner, and he was asking like 4,000 or something like that. And I'm like, hey, the last sales were like 33 and 3,500, something like that. And it's like, yeah, if they lose the game, it's going to go down. It's a new product. I'm like, I'll throw you an offer at, I think, $2,700. The offer is good until game time. My buyer or my seller accepts the offer. I get the CJ manga sent to me. And then lo and behold, the Texans beat the Browns. CJ Stroud mania officially commences. Blue ices start going up from $1,500 to $3,000 raw. And CJ Stroud, then immediately after his subsequent loss, became the quarterback of the offseason. But I'm into this manga for 2,700. I'm taking a look at it and I'm like, man, this has really bad print lines. The edges have some issues with it. I'm a little bit unsure. I'm expecting an 8 to 9, but I do know that mangas are a little bit notorious for their quality control, and that you really kind of never know with mangas. So I sent it express. I got upcharged, and my CJ Stroud manga got a PSA 10. I tried selling it in the off season for a little bit. The price is raw. The first PSA 10 sale was 10,000, and the second PSA 10 sale after they lost was 6,300 or so. So I'm dealing with some people really not knowing how to quantitatively value this CJ Stroud manga. I'm looking at the gem rate now. There's 10 PSA 10s out of 31 total graded and 18 PSA 9. So about a 33% gem rate, a third gem rate. So I got a little bit lucky, in my opinion. So I sent it out to PWCC auction after the Dallas Card Show. I'm like, hey, let's run it. Let's see where it ends. And the CJ Stroud manga PSA 10 ended this weekend and was paid for at $6,600. My seller net was $6,300. And by my math, and by my math, I mean using a calculator while continuing to babble, I made $3,600 on that CJ Stroud. So a nice little double up on a manga. And I got lucky that the Texans won and I bought into the hype. But yeah, I mean, that just shows, and I think is a good example of the magnitude of grading, and that scale happens regardless if you do with $100 denominations or $2,700 denominations.
Well, Max, I'm glad to hear that you made some money on your CJ Strouds. I hope that that's working out. I am personally really skeptical of Anthony Richardson and thinking that he is likely a Sam Howell trash quarterback. What are your thoughts there? You're just trying to flip those ASAP right before the season starts.
My thought is I will be a Sam Howell defender, and I can now say this with a clear conscience that I don't own any Sam Howell. Not that I was saying it with an obstructed conscience before. So I will dissent on what you're saying, and I will say that Sam Howell is a competent quarterback. He led the NFL in passing yards for a long stretch of last season. Haters will say that he had a late bye week in the season, while lovers will say he's just good at passing the ball. So I expect him to flourish if given the opportunity in Seattle behind Mr. Geno Smith. Anthony Richardson did show some signs of greatness before he got injured. I mean, I've heard the comparisons to Jalen Hurts, and I'm not a sports analyzer, so I'm just going to defer to those types of projections. But yeah, I mean, my goal is that the card is going to be moved way sooner than July, so it ultimately doesn't matter. But hey, it's fun to buy and own cards of the big hot players, and I'm never going to deny that it isn't fun. And I think flipping and making money off cards has just been a vehicle for me to own more cards in the first place, which is very fun because I like sports cards.
Well, speaking of some cards I've seen you buying that are not necessarily the guys that are in the news or, on the hype train, I've been seeing you buying a lot of exquisite patch autos, Max. Can you explain to me the thought process behind that? I have seen a Dwight Howard exquisite patch auto. I've seen a Carmelo. I think I've seen some of the most random logo men I've ever seen in my life, including a Ryan Rollins, who I think was arrested for shoplifting from a Walgreens of about $15 worth of products. So why are you buying logo men of dudes that might end up in jail? And why are you buying exquisite patch autos of guys that are no longer playing basketball?
I try to buy fun, cool cards, and usually it's more of a battle if they're tough to find than refusal of wanting to sell Walgreens shoplifters, which, as you can tell, is news to me. And I just bought the game used logo man. I don't buy the player. But no, it's a little bit fun. I think delving out of my comfort zone's always an enticing, fun activity to do, both in sports cards and in real world. Although in the real world, I can't push myself too hard, otherwise I might get life-damaging brain injury, or might get permanent effects. So I'm not pushing myself presently. But in the aspect of diversity in sports card buying, yeah, if the mechanism allows me to, then I will buy exquisite and fun random stuff. OJ Mayo laundry tag NBA tags out of 35 from Exquisite. It's like, hey, it's cool. And if it makes monetary sense to do it, then I'll plunge on it. And I'm trying to expand my ability to buy and sell certain different genres, which is always fun. And I like having fun. And I also like getting cards and cool cards into people's collections. So hey, if it can do both, and I'm in the kiddie pool area of logo men right now. I'm not ready to swim towards like the middle. I'm not ready to go in the pool with a life preserver yet, let alone swim to the deep end. But yeah, I'll take it one step at a time. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. This is my first set of Logo Men I've ever owned, and I don't think you're getting a Logo Man cheaper than Dylan Windler's for $600 for a Nebula Spectra 1 of 1 rookie Logo Man. Let alone some cooler ones like, hey, Brandon Knight is a human being. Brandon Knight's a person. That's pretty dank in my opinion. That's a
I think
real used Logo Man tag. So there's some diversity to it as well.
I think Brandon Knight actually might have dropped 50 in a game one time, so I'll give you that one. He's pretty good. But so did Malachi Flynn the other night, so
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm,
if that
I'm
counts.
still laughing at that Malachi Flynn. At first, I thought I did have CTE when I saw that notification on my phone.
CT ESPN out
Yeah,
here.
if I'm waking out of my few intermittent consciousness and I wake up to Malachi Flynn dropping 50 notification. If that were a week and a half ago, it's like, yeah, something's wrong with my brain for sure.
My favorite meme right now is this meme of this dude who's wearing like a LA Dodgers hat, and it's like fresh out the pen asking me about Andre Ethier, and so I've been making a lot of jokes about that lately because I love that meme. So that's kind of a equivalent for the Malachi Flynn situation that's going on. Well,
Yeah.
Max, thanks for walking us through the logo, man. I think everyone was a little confused what was going on there. So as I have become more focused in my collecting and like less down to buy random cards that I don't really see exactly where they fit right now. I used to be much more willing to buy kind of things that I thought were cool. Didn't really know where they fit in my collection, but just thought they were cool. Yeah, anyone who's been listening to my buys on eBay at the end of these episodes probably knows that I've been buying very much the same things every single week now, kind of not very much variation. So I've been enjoying living, as always, vicariously through CardsMax buying and selling.
Yeah, no, that's a fun way to put it. And hey, I'm always happy for not even just you. Fuck you, Tommy. No, just kidding. But anyone who supports my journey, anyone who likes seeing, how I'm trying to level up and see the cool cards I've owned behind the day. I mean, I'm owning a Giannis Antetokounmpo Silver Prism, and it's like this is the second time I've owned this in a PSA 10. That the fact that I've owned it, that I'm holding one in my hands right now, is crazy to me in of itself. And that I'm owning these marquee quarterback cards and where I was last year and even 2 years ago. And no, it's a again, I'm not just trying to put myself on pedestal, but like or pat myself on the back, but it's like it's a fun journey, and I'm here for every bit of the ride. So yeah, please do live vicariously with me because it's fun having people that care.
Well, I put together the clip episode, like, of a few cool stories that have been told, and then I was listening at some of our older episodes and just, like, hearing you talk about Jordan Nwora, National Treasures RPAs and shit like that now, and then comparing it to what you're up to now, it's just, like, it's kinda night and day. I mean, it's not totally night and day, but it's, like, it's definitely, like, evening to dawn sort of vibes, if you know what I'm saying?
We'll have a nice little brunch in the middle of the day.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Max, there's one thing that I want to do a quick refractor rant on, if you don't mind. And you don't have to touch this if you don't want to, but I've been scrolling Twitter as I do, and our good friend and former guest of the podcast, Will Stern, has recently become editor in chief of a new venture for Darren Rovell called Cllct, I think is how you're going to pronounce it, but it's just basically CLLCT, which gives me strong Cllct vibes. So a little PTSD there. But anyway, I've been seeing a lot of people who are just absolutely shitting on this idea. And basically the idea with the Cllct is that it's going to be like a news site for like collectibles news from, comic books. I know there's some sort of record comic book sale recently that I don't really care about because this is a sports card podcast. But I know their idea is to kind of cover the memorabilia collectible world, and try to give some more legitimacy to the reporting on it. With the idea being that like there's not really like a news outlet that's dedicated to this world that has a pretty sizable GDP in the collectible memorabilia world. So I'm interested to see what happens with it. We love Will. I think he's a great guy. He has a lot of cool ideas and cool thoughts, but there's been a lot of people just shitting on it, being like, "Oh, it's going to be shilling. It's just going to be like a shill site where they just like talk up big collectibles and expensive sales and stuff like that." I just want to say, give it a chance. I like Will. I can't speak to Darren Rovell at all. I know he is, as some will say, lacking some. What was the word, Max, that we were saying earlier? He lacks some.
Self awareness.
He lacks self-awareness. Thank you, Max. He does lack a little bit of self-awareness. So, we'll see how it goes, but let's not shit on something before it even starts. There are I think there's a lot of validity and value adds that can come to the hobby collecting world with a site like this. I get that people are skeptical. I think healthy skepticism is absolutely good. Let's be critical of people who are reporting on the world that we are active contributors and members of. Let's hold them to it and make sure that they're not just shilling stuff and whatever. But let's see what happens. I think Will's a guy whose heart and head is in the right place. I'm excited to see what happens with the site. Me personally, I will say I don't really give a shit about a comic book or even a card selling for $8 million or $6 million or $1 million or mangas selling for fucking $6,600. Like, that's not something I really personally care about. I like hearing about your experiences, Max, and the world in general in the market, but like I couldn't really care less about that. I care more about like the new releases coming out. I care about my own collection. I care about what other people collect. I would definitely, empathize, Max, with your feeling of like, and really enjoying getting cards into people's collections. That's one of the reasons why I love trading so much, is because not only am I getting a card for my collection, but I'm also contributing to someone else's or contributing to one of their ventures that they got going on at a business level. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on the matter, Max. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. You can punt this if you want to just not say anything.
Will is a friend of the podcast and of the community, and I support Will's work. I support his intelligence. I support his journalism, and I would bat for most of the other guests or friends of the podcast as well. So I guess it's just me doing it with Will. Yeah, I mean, I can't judge something before it's produced, and I think Will is a talented writer, and he contributes to the space positively. It's just going to be interesting what they demand and what they want him to specifically curate. And doesn't help when the running joke is Cllct looks like Clit in all of their productions of their logo and media, and you have a very polarizing personality as the founder, and polarizing in a bad way. Usually polarizing is a pretty good way when it comes to standing out and drawing your own attention. And sure, I guess that's made him his 2 million per individual following. He has some lovers and sometimes he has some haters. And I'm going to be neutral. I'm going to let it see how it paves out, because a media production site with fully fledged journalists dedicated to emphasis on innovative and unique pieces that can capture pieces of attention, I think is conductive to the community. And not that there's anything wrong with click aggregation and content production just for the sake of content production, or being bought out by a large media company that's known to grift. I've been told, I don't know, and what my specific illusion is. But yeah, I just hope that this is a hobby net positive. I'm not necessarily optimistic about it given the staff, but having Will on the team makes me more optimistic, and it's going to make me less judgmental until we see some products. But at the end of the day, they're just a company, bro. It's not your life story. It's not our life story. So I hope this company is contributive to the space.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing that I saw recently, Max, that I got a good chuckle out of is that Leaf said that they are licensed by collectors, and I thought that was funny. And I think that that is kind of like how anything is going to go in the hobby. Like, if collectors are into something, like they are Pop Century Leaf cards and whatever else they kind of put out sometimes that people buy into, you know, the more the merrier. Like, let's be welcoming of people who might have slightly different perspectives on the hobby and are coming in. Like, I don't know. I'm personally pro growth in the hobby. I get some people are like skeptical of outsiders and are like, you're just in it for the money or you're just in it for this or this. I'm like, I don't really care why you're in it. If you like cards and you think they're cool, I'm down to talk about them with you. Like, I have my own thing. I'm collecting my own cards. I don't really give a shit what other people are collecting or whatever else they're saying about cards. Like, we have this podcast because we like to talk about cards and we wanted to like share our time with other people. And I know if I like to listen to card podcasts and I'm like, hey, I like to talk about cards. Why not just talk with Max? He's a wealth of knowledge as well. I hope people like reading about cards on Cllct, and I hope they put out good articles. But we'll continue to be skeptical, slightly skeptical, healthy skepticism, and report back as they start actually putting out articles, and we'll give our perspective as that sort of stuff actually comes out. But just wanted to touch that because it's been on my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to touch it. And I think, hey, we're supportive of growth and contributions to the space, both in our own mechanisms and seeing other new media outlets become that. And I think as long as it's good for cards, it's good. As long as it's good for money grabbing, it's bad. I know I had a pretty quick shift on loving the new Fanatics Innovation Parallels to, okay, this is just clearly a money grab. And I think making sure that there's a sober mindset not to love or hate. So that's something I'm using a lot this episode. Not to immediately chastise someone or praise them depending on their actions, and not try to remove the bias from it and try to be critical on a how does this benefit me and how does this benefit the hobby, me being a consumer and broker of cards and lover of cards. And as long as this is a space that is conducive to success and not necessarily just investors trying to pry away from it, then that's going to be the game changer for what is a positive for the space.
Well said, Max, as always. Well, Max, I think we're at the point in the episode that everyone loves and is ready for, which is deals of the week. Often we will go off on rants that extend this episode almost double the length of the current length of the podcast. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for our deals of the week. I'm going to start out here, Max. I have one card I got in that I am extremely hyped about. It also involves a former guest of the podcast, and it is this Brandon Crawford 2011 update rookie debut. This is a Hoped Diamond out of 60 from 2011 Topps. It is a beautiful card. It is what I like to call the kind of birth of the Blue Ice Sapphire movement, anyway, and the best parallel that Topps has ever made, in my opinion, in flagship. This card is especially special to me, because Brandon Crawford actually debuted on my 13th birthday, May 27th, 2011, and he hit a grand slam. I know, Max, we have previously talked about rookie debut cards, their kind of blandness, often kind of randomness. Do they matter? Does anyone really care? This is a good example of one that I really enjoy. There is no rookie card logo on the card, but it is a rookie debut. They used to just do like a little line of text underneath or above the name, I guess, in 2011. I got this card from a friend of the podcast and former guest at Saratoga Slabs, who texted me, said, "Hey, do you want this?" Sent me a picture of it. I instantly said, "Yo, I've been looking for this card all over the place. There's one on eBay for like $1,000, but like, no way this card's worth $1,000. It's Brandon Crawford. He's not a Hall of Famer, now on the Cardinals, but Giants legend regardless." He goes, "I'm not looking to make money on this. I just am excited that you're excited about it." He sent me literally a screenshot of how much it cost him, which I think was like $55 or something. I immediately sent him $65 or $70 or something on Venmo. He shipped it out to me. So I'm very excited about that Brandon Crawford card. It wasn't something that I was expecting to pick up, but if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I will buy any Giants Hope Diamond that is at a reasonable price that I can find. Those cards are awesome. One other card that I've been buying, with some cards that I've been really looking into. I don't have one of them with me, but I do have this Patrick McCaw Panini Threads from 2016-17. This is a die cut card with a jersey. Basically, it's just the jersey, and on the back it has their like last name and number. It is one of the cooler like basketball cards that I think have ever been released. I also bought a Kevin Durant from 2016-17 in the Warriors uni, and that card only cost me less than $20 shipped for the Kevin Durant. And these are pretty rare inserts that I'm not totally sure on the print run or anything, but in terms of just like cool basketball cards, this is something I actually have been kind of growing my collection, or as those back pages likes to say, spreading your net wide. I do like to extend my net, contrary to what I was saying earlier, but these cards are just cool. I think they're sick. I think if I were to kind of go deeper into collecting non-Warriors basketball cards, I might look to pick up some of my favorite basketball players of all time, these Threads cards. Max, have you ever owned any of these Threads, like the Threads jersey cards?
Outside of the one that you sent me as a Christmas present, or Christmas present recommendation, rather, no, I have not.
I forgot about that. But yeah, no, I love these cards. They're also like weirdly hard to make eBay saved searches for, because I believe they're just called Threads, which is just also the name of the set. So it's actually kind of hard to search for them. It's hard to find them. Sometimes they'll sell for a lot. Sometimes they'll sell for nothing. And you can kind of like, I don't know, game it. There's some auto versions of them that are even cooler from 2012-13. Just a little rabbit hole I've been going down into. Unfortunately, Panini has kind of abandoned the die cut and gone with a uniformity insert that they put in like Contenders Optic, and it has like the player in front of the jersey, and it's not a die cut. I think that is a kind of terrible evolution of that insert. So I would beg Panini to evolve that back into what it used to be. I think a chrome version of the die cut would be pretty sick in the Optic or something. So That's another deal I made. I made a bunch of PWE trades in the last few weeks too, Max, but I don't really feel like going into those too deep. I did buy 3 cards that came in today that I'm pretty hyped about. These are 3 Corbin Carroll 2024 Topps cards. Whoop, one is a 35th anniversary gold out of 75. And I've talked about these before, but I really do love the 35th anniversary inserts from Topps Flagship. And I especially love that they have these gold parallels that are actually rare, unlike like flagship paper base gold parallels. These are out of 75 this year. Previously, they've been as low as 50 out of 50. So the 35th anniversaries, I especially like the parallels of, because they're not super common, and the golds being out of 75 or out of 50 in previous years. Those are some rare cards that often do not get scooped up for a premium by any means. They're often very affordable and pretty rare. And I did mention in the previous episode about how much I like the real ones parallels that they put out for these 35th anniversary ones now. But those are just a few cards I wanted to mention, Max. What else? What did you buy this week, or the last few weeks, actually, or any sort of deals that you feel like are worth bringing up?
Yeah, it's funny. The first deal that immediately came to mind because of just how jarring of a good deal was the All-Star Thompson PSA 10 Blue Ice that I'm pretty sure I mentioned last week. So I will not be rementioning it again, but it is always a little bit funny to land a PSA 10 for $50 higher than what the raw equivalence does. I'm going to keep it a little bit fun and lighthearted in that I was buying Anthony Richardson Kabooms for I think about $900 to $950 with the intent to grade. And one of the Anthony Richardson Kabooms I bought mandated that I bought it in a Kaboom Anthony Richardson custom card holder came with the card. And he was firm in surcharging $5 for the case, of which I accepted. And we'll have a fun graphic for the screen. But no, it has a fun little label in a custom case. It said Anthony Richardson Kaboom, and it was immediately removed from that and put into a card saver to send out to California, or at least hopefully with success in California. But yeah, that was one of my deals of the week in landing that for $5, the custom Anthony Richardson holder. I bought a pair of Connor Bedard clear cuts for about 3,000. I think that was a little bit under comps at the time on eBay. The goal is to have, again, the very boring motif of the episode is that the goal is to have success grading them. They have some light scratch issues, but are overall a little bit less prone to damage than the outburst parallels.
Question from an ignorant person here. What level of rarity are we looking at with the clear cut Young Gun parallels?
I
Like,
think
I
that
know there's more parallels this year than previous years, but where do these fall in that?
so to the best extent, so Young Guns average about 8 cards per hobby box, I want to say. And with hobby boxes having 12 boxes per case times 8, something like that. Whatever. I think this thesis is that a Bedard, this I do know, a Bedard is about one Young Guns Bedard per case of Upper Deck Series 2 hockey. I don't remember how the math breakdown is. I believe the outburst parallels, which have a white kind of explosion in the background, are the most common parallel, which is still pretty rare. And the clear cut acetate is the second most common parallel, which is also pretty darn rare. It's a little bit fun seeing these all pop up from Canada, or at least a big chunk of them coming from Canadian sellers, and they probably were true collectors that just want to cash in on their big hit. And it's fun to see the sport of hockey grow in the United States. I sent one to Beckett, one clear cut to Beckett, and one clear cut to PSA, just because of the severity of what, in my opinion, was scratching. And we'll see how they do. And I also have some Steph Curry and LeBron downtowns from this year. I paid pretty much full comp on them. I think they're like $1,500 each. And again, very, very boring take, but I'm just hoping for the best on them. And hope's not a strategy, but the downtowns this year are gemming well. I'll let people research that themselves. But yeah, Steph Curry and LeBron get the small surcharge on grading them and getting the 10s, hopefully, if it breaks right, and then pivot and move on. So I'm buying some Bedards. I haven't bought too many. I bought only one Bedard paper base, and we'll see if that gems or not But I'm not losing my hat with Bedard. I'm buying some downtowns, and I'm trying to buy whatever works.
Those downtowns from this year, they're like Panini 1-in-1, right? Or whatever the fuck
Panini
that
one,
product is called.
yeah.
Yeah, what do they come encased? Did I say that correct? Like they
Yes,
come in their own little.
they do come encased. This is the first year that they're using the black one touch, which is sick. In previous years, they just had the typical clear one touch, but I do think that's a move that was a net positive.
Sick. Well, I have one more card I forgot to mention, and I bought it last night on eBay. It has not come in hand yet. It is also an encased card from 21 years ago. It is a 2003 Topps Chrome Mark Ellis X Fractor out of 57. Which, Max, if you can see this, is one of just like just a cool looking card. It's Mark Ellis Gold Cup. First year of X Fractors. They were box toppers in Topps Chrome.
Mhm.
It also has the U.S. flag in the background, so it's just a very sick looking card. Um, I got it for $31 and $5 shipping, which is an insane price to pay for a Mark Ellis card. But I was feeling some intense nostalgia recently around the Oakland A's. I grew up in Oakland, as people know, but I did grow up a Giants fan. But I did go to a ton of A's games. I probably have been to like well over 50 A's games in my life. Have had a lot of fun memories going to games there. Definitely rooted pretty hard for their early, the 2000s teams with Eric Chavez and those guys. I had a lot of fun rooting for them. And, while the Giants always kind of had my heart, I was always rooting for the best for the A's, which is not what I can always say for A's fans in the vice versa situation. I know a lot of A's fans who are pretty salty about all the rings that the Giants won, but I was always rooting, hoping for the best for the A's and to see how it all has kind of turned out with them now going to Sacramento for 3 years, which I think is going to be an absolute shit show. Sacramento, with all due respect, I have no respect. The A's, the Oakland is much more deserving of an MLB team than Sacramento. The Coliseum itself, you can say what you want about that, but I had a lot of fun times in there. And just to see them leave Oakland is just a bummer, especially after the Raiders and the Warriors have already left Oakland. That area, if you're familiar and you've ever been to the Coliseum area where they had at one point the Raiders, Warriors, and A's all playing in the same, very small vicinity. It was a very fun time. And, I'm kind of bummed that none of those A's stadium things ever were turned out, but I am glad that the city held firm and not funding for fucking John Fisher's bitch ass. So moral of the story here, fuck John Fisher. I was feeling some strong nostalgia for the A's, something that fit in with my PC Mark Ellis, absolute A's legend. So that's my little last bit for Max. Do you have any parting thoughts here for the people?
No parting thoughts. I say we both shared a lot of parting thoughts, so we'll end it on your note, Tommy.
Well, Max, I am glad to be back talking sports cards with you, and I hope to have even more fun shit to talk about next week.